This is so good. There's so much science in this chapter. It's like, tastes so good. Hello and welcome back to the couch. We saved you a seat. My name is Luke and today we're checking out chapter 5 of Project Hail Mary. Once again, love this book. About 100 pages in, that's when chapter 5 ends. It's getting real juicy, y'all. It's getting real juicy. So if you like to tag along with me on this journey, there's a description for the book. In my description, there's an Amazon link. Go ahead and make that purchase. Get the book. Go along with the journey. But let's kick it off. Okay. So this is an entire flashback. We just ended chapter 4 where Ryland was stuck in the ship and he's having kind of a mental breakdown because he doesn't remember what all has happened to him and why he's there. He remembers a few things, but he's stuck because he knows that, oh, this is a one-way trip based on his map. This chapter is all about how he gets there. So it's all a flashback. Ryland cuts back to the lab. It's been a couple of days later. He's been working basically nonstop. And he begins testing these 3 astrophages on how they're attracted to different kinds of light, right? Because he wants to determine, why are they going from the sun to Venus? Or why are they going from the poles of the sun to Venus, actually? So he uses the frequency of light that comes from Venus. He tries any old light in a pitch black dark closet that he builds in the lab. And none of it seems to work. None of it seems to get these astrophages agitated enough to dart across the room. So he sits and he ponders and he's about to have a moment. And then he suddenly realizes, he said, oh, maybe, well, everything emits light. A little bit at least. Maybe it's the CO2, the atmosphere that is so abundant on Venus. Maybe they're attracted to the atmosphere. What is the frequency of atmosphere in terms of light emission? And so he redoes his experiment and he sets some color gel probably over the light and he begins the experiment, pitch black dark, does it, turns the light on, zoop, all 3 gone. And then he freaks out, right? These are the most valuable things on the planet. And he lost 3 of them. But then he comes up with a bright idea. So he needs basically an IR glasses to see a heat source. So he covers every bit of light in the lab. He covers the windows, he covers everything, pitch black dark, and he makes some makeshift IR glasses and he puts them on and he looks around for heat sources. Of course, the heat source comes from the window, himself, everything, it glows. But he ramps it up to above 100 degrees Celsius, closer to that 90 or so degrees. No, sorry, he ramps it up to like pretty high, higher than everything else, because the little astrophage is 96 degrees Celsius, right? And so right below the boiling point. And so he's kind of looking around for where they could be. It should be emitting enough heat that he can see it. And then he suddenly sees the first one and the second one and the third one. And then he sees a 4th one. He had successfully breeded a 4th one. Now the balls are turning. Now things are cooking. He finally figures it out. See, he recognizes that the reason that they travel to Venus is to replicate, right? Replicate. But there's only 4. That means only 1 replicated, only 1 reproduced. And so he's like, okay, why did only the 1 and not the other 2? So he redoes the experiment again, and he's got both the CO2 frequencies. I don't remember the exact number, but he's got both of them. And he tries the experiment again. Both the ones that were travelers left, and the reproductive ones stayed. And then it happened again for the other CO2 frequency. It happened both times. The stayer stayed and the movers moved. And so he thought, okay, well, they have to get back to the sun, right? So let's produce this and see what happens. Come to find out, he does the exact same experiment. He goes somewhere in San Francisco, gets the brightest light that he can. He does the exact same experiment, and zoop, back to the light. He figured out the life cycle. The astrophages were using the magnetosphere of the sun to travel to the poles, and then it would, I guess, look for the closest high concentration of CO2 and travel at near the speed of light to Venus, absorb the CO2, reproduce. Once it's reproduced and it's completely, well, once it's reproduced, it then zooms back to the sun. Fascinating. So that moves us on to the next part where he's got to convey this to Strat. So he calls Strat immediately after he's double or triple blind tested or whatever, and they speak for a moment, and he's like, hey, I figured out how they can reproduce, and he's like, without destroying them. And that was a key for me. That was a moment. It goes back to the previous chapter, right? Because they're so you kind of know from the previous chapter they're already kind of part of the fuel source, and so he gets put. He tells her this. The military dudes put him on a plane or put him on a helicopter. He gets on a jet. He takes a jet to Hawaii. He then gets on another plane. He takes another jet. He lands on a aircraft carrier. And this is a Chinese aircraft carrier, reinforcing that this is a world problem, not a United States issue. They did this in The Martian too. It was a pretty interesting thing. And so they go to the Chinese aircraft carrier. He is ushered down into a conference room where there sits all these officials. And he's like, oh, Strat is maybe the leader of the planet right now, most important person on the planet. And then she's like, now you talk. And he then explains to these officials, military scientists, whatever, exactly how he created the experiment and exactly what his findings are. They let it slip a few times that there is ways that they can do some other things with the astrophage, that some of the other scientists had kind of figured out some other things. But Strat removes Ryland, has him go take a nap. He sleeps for like 14 hours. He gets shaven, he gets whatever, and they usher him back to the conference room. Now this is where the juicy part starts. In the conference room, there's only a few people. There's a German representative, there's a Russian representative, and then there's Strat and there's Ryland, and I think there's a Chinese person. And Strat begins to talk about what Project Hail Mary is, which was a little bit controversial, but Strat was like, hey, we don't have time for this crap. We gotta move forward. Okay? And they explain that the Russians had figured out that through the last couple of days, through the last day or whatever, when they determined that Ryland's experiment was correct, that the astrophage, after traveling, loses weight. It uses the light like we do with calories as an energy source, and so it becomes lighter. Well, calories are a measurement of heat, right? So how much does it take to destroy this or convert this matter into different kinds of matter, right? It takes X amount of calories, whatever, in your body. Similar fashion, these astrophages get lighter as they travel, right? Once they run out of heat, and then they move on. So they're going to also, they let them know that there's a bunch of suns out there through some pretty hilarious means, because a bunch of amateurs have been looking at suns and they've all noticed that some of the suns are dimming. A bunch of stars out there have been dimming, and that each one of the stars are approximately 8 light years from each other, or within 8 light years of another star that's dimming, right? And they all dim to 10%, and then they just stop dimming. Well, if our sun dims 10%, we're all goners, all of us. So they decide, Project Hail Mary, to build a ship and utilize the astrophage as the fuel source after breeding what they consider to be not that much, but 2 million kilos 2 million kilos is the amount of fuel they would need to get from Earth to this one star that's within 8 light years from some of the infected stars, but that is completely unaffected. So they're going to send people from Earth to this star to figure out why it's unaffected by the astrophage. Super, super cool. And what they then do is assign Ryland to create a full, like a large model so that they can begin breeding the astrophage. And let's see, did I forget anything? Also, Ryland's like, I want to go home. I want to work from home. And she's like, yeah, this is your home now, dude. So he's basically being held against his will. And he's got to create this mechanism where the astrophage, and he talks about it earlier that it's a dark tube, that he used an elbow tube, right? An elbow tube. And then there's the light source here. And then here is the magnetosphere. And then here is the CO2, the light from the CO2. And it would travel, the astrophage would travel here and then back. Fascinating. Fascinating. So he has to create a life-size model so they can begin to reproduce the astrophage to use its source to go to this planet. And Ryland is stuck on the ship. And they tell him, they're like, look, if we blow up this ship, it could be the largest explosion the Earth has ever seen because of how these astrophages work. Super fascinating. The chapters keep getting better, which is really, really cool. The last chapter I was in, it was a heartfelt, it was all heart, like, it's all the feels. This one was science. I love that we got this flashback. This was necessary because I needed a big push of flashback. These, like, scene, then scene, then scene, then scene. It was good. It was fine. I needed this. You know what I mean? Needed this. This is very cool. I can't wait for chapter 6. I love that Ryland is beginning to meet new people because he's got this relationship, right, we know about on the ship with this Russian woman and this Chinese dude. And I'm wondering when we're going to meet those people. I'm wondering how they're going to continue to figure out what's going on. I've got a few other, like, science-y questions that have nothing to do with the book, more or less. Just, you know, if it's all about energy transfer, but I'm gonna let the book explain it because we've only figured out that life cycle: reproduction, move on, reproduction, move on, reproduction. We haven't figured out why this evolution has happened. We haven't figured out where the light goes. We haven't figured out some of the CO2 stuff. It might just be the light that they absorb from the CO2 rather than the CO2 itself. That might be it. I don't know. I maybe should have read that a little better. That's on me. But there's a few, like, science-y things that are kind of missing. And with Ryland realizing that it's a one-way trip that he's on in the current time, not in the flashback moments, but in the current time, could he not just breed more? Anyway, that's a time for another time. Maybe the ship isn't capable of doing that. But anyway, love this book. Can't wait to keep going. Once again, check the description. You can buy it on Amazon. It's a great read. I'm not a reader. I'm not a reader, but I think it's gonna be great. And I can't wait to put out more content. If you like this content, please like and subscribe and share. But until next time, later, taters.